Benchmarking large language models against the Sepsis-3 protocol reveals a 30% logic failure rate during zero-shot inference when calculating sequential organ failure assessment scores. Transform unstructured clinical practice guidelines from PDF files into structured JSON schemas to create a ground truth database for deterministic model output validation. Implement Retrieval-Augmented Generation with strict metadata filtering to ensure the model only accesses institutional protocols rather than potentially conflicting information from its training weights. Traditional metrics like Rouge and Meteor fail in medical contexts because they do not account for critical negations where a single word change flicks the clinical meaning. Extract logical predicates from clinical protocols to build programmatic test cases that verify if the model follows the correct branching logic for patient triage. Identify non-existent drug dosages by comparing model-generated prescriptions against a verified pharmacopoeia using exact string matching and numerical range validation. Embed 5 diverse examples of protocol-compliant reasoning within the system prompt to guide the model toward the specific formatting and logic required for clinical documentation. Force the model to output its intermediate reasoning steps. This allows analysts to pinpoint exactly where the clinical logic diverged from the established protocol. Evaluate the model's ability to extract symptoms and vital signs correctly. Any omission of a primary diagnostic criterion must be flagged as a critical failure. Integrate an automated scoring engine into the CI/CD pipeline to run 1,000 clinical test cases every time the model weights or prompts are updated. Use a panel of clinicians to grade model outputs on a Likert scale. Use this data to fine-tune a secondary evaluator model for automated quality assurance.
Measure the trade-off between inference time and protocol adherence. In emergency medicine contexts, a slow model is just as dangerous as an inaccurate one. Stress test the system by providing ambiguous patient data or conflicting symptoms to observe if the model correctly defaults to the most conservative clinical protocol. Log every inference, including the retrieved context and the prompt version, to satisfy regulatory requirements for transparency in AI-assisted clinical decisions. Replace general-purpose embedding models with domain-specific versions, like BioBERT, to improve the retrieval accuracy of rare medical conditions and specific drug interactions. Determine the model's sensitivity in identifying life-threatening conditions. A high false negative rate in protocol evaluation is unacceptable for deployment in clinical settings. Protocols change annually. Implement a version control system for your ground truth data to ensure the model is always evaluated against the most current medical standards. Use a more powerful model as a judge to evaluate the adherence of a smaller, faster model. Provide the judge with the full protocol text for reference. Apply natural language inference to check if the model's recommendation is logically entailed by the provided protocol. Detect contradictions before they reach the user interface. Evaluate the model across diverse patient demographics to ensure that protocol adherence remains consistent, regardless of age, gender, or ethnic background indicators in the notes. Implement circuit breakers and fallback models to maintain clinical protocol support, even during API outages or rate-limiting events from the primary model provider. Explicitly test the model with sentences like "patient does not have chest pain" to ensure the attention mechanism correctly weights the negation word over the symptom. Protocols for complex conditions often require 5 or more steps. Evaluate the model's state management to ensure it doesn't lose track of the patient's history. When protocols are long, the context window might overflow. Use summarization techniques that preserve all numerical values and critical diagnostic criteria to maintain protocol integrity. Differentiate between soft stylistic preferences and hard clinical constraints. A violation of a hard constraint must trigger an immediate system override or a warning flag. Design the user interface to highlight where the model suggestion deviates from the standard protocol, allowing the clinician to make an informed decision for unique cases. Monitor for model drift by comparing live outputs against a golden dataset weekly. Updates to the model by the provider can silently degrade clinical protocol performance. Use generative models to create synthetic patient data that purposely tests the boundaries of clinical protocols, identifying weaknesses before they affect real patients. When a patient has comorbidities, protocols may conflict. Evaluate the model's ability to prioritize treatments according to established clinical hierarchy rules. Run the same prompt 3 times with a temperature of 0. Any variance in clinical recommendation indicates an unstable model that requires better prompt grounding. Develop robust pre-processing to handle typos and shorthand in clinical notes.
Protocols rely on exact values, which can be obscured by poor data entry. Implement logit lengths or entropy measures to quantify the model's confidence. If the model is uncertain about a protocol step, it must refuse to answer. No model should be deployed unless it achieves a 99% adherence rate on the core safety protocols. This threshold is the final safeguard.
Perform all evaluations within a secure enclave or private cloud. Clinical protocols often involve sensitive patient data that must never leave the compliant environment. Create a feedback loop where clinician corrections are converted into new few-shot examples. This creates a system that evolves with institutional medical expertise. Verify that the model does not round critical dosages inappropriately. A rounded number in a pediatric context can lead to toxic levels or subtherapeutic treatment. The model must cite the specific section of the protocol it used for its decision. Citations allow for rapid human audit and build trust with clinicians. For protocols involving imaging, ensure the model's text analysis matches the visual findings reported by the radiology AI. Discrepancies must trigger a high-priority alert. Optimize the inference stack to meet sub-second response times required for live patient monitoring. Any delay in protocol processing can compromise acute care outcomes. Implement a self-correction step where a second prompt asks the model to double-check its own output against the provided protocol constraints before finalization. Evaluate the model using data from multiple hospital systems. Protocol adherence often varies due to differences in lab equipment and local medical terminology. Assess the model's ability to follow protocols over a multi-day patient stay. Correct triage on day 1 must be maintained throughout subsequent clinical updates. Deploy semantic guardrails that act as a wrapper around the model. These guardrails intercept and block any response that violates predefined medical safety rules. Successful evaluation against clinical protocols is the only way to move medical large language models from experimental pilots to standardized clinical practice. As medical knowledge doubles every few months, automated protocol evaluation systems are the only scalable solution for maintaining safe and effective AI in healthcare.